The emergency klaxon screamed through the corridors of Orbital Station Prometheus as Captain Sarachon sprinted toward the docking bay. Her combat boots echoed against the metal flooring, each step punctuating the chaos that had erupted across the Outer Rim territories. The holographic displays flickering along the walls showed the same terrifying image repeatedly. Massive, serpentine creatures emerging from hyperspace rifts, their scales gleaming like molten metal as they tore through human settlements with impossible grace and devastating power. The galaxy had given them a name within hours of first contact: dragons. The comparison was apt, though it failed to capture the true horror of these beings. Each creature stretched nearly a kilometer in length, their bodies undulating through space as easily as through atmosphere. Bioluminescent patterns pulsed along their hides, creating mesmerizing displays that had lured more than one human pilot to their death. Most terrifying of all were their eyes, ancient, intelligent, and filled with what could only be described as contempt for humanity's very existence. Sarah burst into the command center to find Admiral Marcus Rodriguez hunched over the tactical display, his weathered face illuminated by the red glow of emergency lighting. Around him, junior officers worked frantically at their stations, coordinating evacuation efforts from the 12 outer colonies that had been hit in the past 72 hours. The numbers were staggering. Over 2 million civilians dead, another million missing, and humanity's most advanced warships reduced to debris fields floating in the void. "Report," Sarah demanded, catching her breath as she approached the admiral. Her rank as captain of the experimental vessel Defiance gave her clearance for the highest-level briefings, though she wondered if anyone truly understood what they were facing. Rodriguez looked up, his eyes reflecting the weight of command during humanity's darkest hour. "It's worse than we thought, Sarah. The dragons aren't just attacking randomly. There's a pattern, a strategy. They're systematically dismantling our infrastructure, targeting our communication relays first, then our defensive platforms, and, finally, the civilian populations." He gestured toward the holographic representation of the Outer Rim, where red markers indicated destroyed colonies. "Whatever these things are, they understand warfare better than we do." The tactical officer, Lieutenant Kim Park, turned from her station with a grim expression. "Captain, we've received distress signals from Kepler 442b. The agricultural colony there is under attack. Current population, 43,000 civilians, mostly families." Her voice cracked slightly on the last word. Sarah knew that Kim had grown up on an agricultural world not unlike Kepler 442b. Sarah studied the star chart, calculating distances and hyperspace routes in her head. "How long until our nearest fleet can reach them?" 18 hours minimum, Rodriguez replied. "The dragons hit our forward staging areas first. Everything we have left is either defending Earth and the core worlds or scattered across half the galaxy trying to evacuate survivors." The weight of 43,000 lives pressed down on Sarah's shoulders. In 18 hours, if the pattern held, Kepler 442b would be nothing but ash and twisted metal. She thought of the children who would never see another sunrise, the families who had worked for generations to build something beautiful on that distant world. The dragons showed no mercy, no interest in communication or negotiation. They simply arrived, destroyed everything human, and vanished back into hyperspace as mysteriously as they had come. "What about Defiance?" Sarah asked, though she already knew the answer would change everything. Rodriguez's expression grew even more serious. "Your ship is our most advanced prototype, but, Sarah, it's still experimental. Half the systems haven't been fully tested, and you'd be going in alone against creatures that have destroyed entire battle groups." Defiance was indeed humanity's most ambitious project, a fusion of human engineering and recovered alien technology from a dozen different species. Its hull was constructed from programmable matter that could adapt to different threats in real time. The weapons systems included plasma cannons capable of punching through a moon, and the navigation system utilized quantum entanglement for faster-than-light travel that bypassed traditional hyperspace entirely. Most importantly, Defiance carried the empathy engine, a prototype AI designed to analyze and understand alien psychology. Sarah's mind raced through the possibilities. The empathy engine might be our only chance at understanding these things. If we can figure out why they're attacking, maybe we can find a way to stop them. She paused, looking around the command center at the faces of her fellow officers. Or at least save those people on Kepler 442b. Captain, interrupted the communications officer, Ensign David Torres. We're receiving a transmission from the surface of Kepler 442b. Audio only, but the signal is weak. The speakers crackled to life, filled with static and the distant sound of explosions. Then a voice emerged, young and terrified. This is Emma Voss, age 12, broadcasting from New Haven Colony. The monsters came from the sky 3 hours ago. They're beautiful, but they're killing everyone. My parents told me to hide in the emergency shelter and keep broadcasting until someone comes. Please, if anyone can hear this, we're in the underground complex beneath the main agricultural center. There are maybe 200 of us left. The creatures keep making this sound like singing, but it makes people walk outside where the transmission dissolved into static. The command center fell silent, except for the hum of electronics and the distant wail of the emergency klaxons. Sarah closed her eyes for a moment, seeing her own childhood on Europa, the vast ice fields, and the warm underground cities where families gathered for evening meals. She thought of Emma Voss, 12 years old, and broadcasting into the darkness, hoping someone would care enough to come. "I'm taking Defiance," Sarah announced, her voice carrying the authority that had earned her command of humanity's most advanced ship. "Prep the crew for immediate departure." Rodriguez grabbed her arm. "Sarah, this is suicide. We've lost contact with every ship that's engaged these creatures directly. The few survivors we've recovered can barely speak coherently about what they experienced." "Then, maybe it's time we tried a different approach," Sarah replied. "Every ship we've sent has gone in with guns blazing, treating the dragons like any other hostile alien species. But what if they're not? What if there's something we're missing?" She pulled up the tactical data on her personal tablet, scrolling through the after-action reports from the previous engagements. "Look at the patterns, Marcus. The dragons always arrive in small groups, never more than 3 at a time. They target specific locations with surgical precision, and according to the few survivors, they seem almost reluctant during the attacks, like they're following orders they don't particularly want to follow." Lieutenant Park looked up from her console. "Captain, there's something else. The xenobiology team has been analyzing the debris from destroyed dragon creatures. Yes, we have managed to kill a few. Their tissue samples show signs of genetic modification, artificial enhancement. These beings weren't born, they were made." This revelation sent a chill through Sarah's spine. If the dragons were created rather than evolved, it meant there was someone or something else behind the attacks. A puppet master pulling the strings, using these magnificent and terrible creatures as weapons of war. The implications were staggering. "All the more reason to try a different approach," Sarah said. "If these creatures are being controlled, maybe we can find a way to communicate with them, to break whatever hold their masters have over them." Rodriguez studied her face for a long moment, seeing the determination that had made Sarah Chun one of the youngest captains in the fleet. "What's your plan?" The empathy engine was designed to bridge the gap between human and alien consciousness. "If I can get close enough to one of these dragons, maybe I can establish some kind of mental contact, learn what they really want, what they're really feeling." She paused, knowing how crazy it sounded. According to Dr. Yassi's research, the engine works by creating a temporary psychic link. If the dragons are intelligent, and everything suggests they are, then there might be a way to reach them. "And if you're wrong?" Rodriguez asked quietly. "If they're just killing machines with no capacity for reason or mercy?" Sarah looked at the star chart showing Kepler 442b, thinking of Emma Voss and the 200 survivors hiding in an underground shelter, waiting for someone to answer their call for help. Then, At least I'll die trying to save them instead of sitting here watching them die from a safe distance. The Admiral nodded slowly. God help me, I'm authorizing this mission. But, Sarah, you're not going alone. Take Lieutenant Park with you. If anyone can make sense of alien behavior patterns, it's her. And I want Dr. Yasi aboard to monitor the empathy engine. If this works, we need to understand how and why. 20 minutes later, Sarah stood on the bridge of Defiance, watching the final systems check scroll across the main display. The ship hummed around her with barely contained energy, its adaptive hull already shifting into its hyperspace configuration. Lieutenant Park had taken the science station, her fingers dancing over holographic controls as she prepared the dragon hunting protocols they had developed during the long journey from Earth. Dr. Elena Yasi, the empathy engine's creator, worked at a specialized console that looked more like an altar than a control station. Crystals and fiber optic cables created intricate patterns around a central chair where Sarah would sit during the attempted contact. Captain, Dr. Yasi said, her accent carrying traces of her childhood on Mars. I must emphasize that this technology has never been tested on beings of this magnitude. The psychic feedback could be overwhelming, potentially fatal. Noted, Doctor, Sarah replied. But right now, it's the only chance those people have. The navigation officer, Commander James Murphy, looked up from his station. Course laid in for Kepler, 442b. Quanta Drive is online and ready. We can be there in 47 minutes. Sarah settled into the captain's chair, feeling the weight of command and the even heavier weight of hope. Take us out, Murphy. Maximum speed. Defiance slipped away from orbital station Prometheus like a ghost, its adaptive hull rendering it nearly invisible against the backdrop of space. As they entered quantum drive, reality seemed to fold around them, stars becoming streams of light that bent and twisted in impossible directions. Sarah watched the displays, knowing that with each passing second, more people on Kepler 442b might be dying. Captain, Lieutenant Park said, studying the sensor readings, I'm detecting some unusual energy signatures from the direction of our destination. The patterns are unlike anything in our databases. Dragon signatures? Sarah asked. Possibly, but there's something else. The readings suggest the presence of technology even more advanced than what we've seen from the dragons themselves. Whatever's happening at Kepler 442b, we may not be the only ones interested in the outcome. As Defiance raced through folded space toward a confrontation that could determine humanity's future, Sarah found herself thinking about the nature of monsters. Every species humanity had encountered in its expansion across the galaxy had initially seemed monstrous until they learned to communicate, to understand each other's perspectives. Perhaps the dragons were no different. Perhaps beneath their terrifying exterior lay beings capable of reason, compassion, even friendship. Or perhaps she was flying into the jaws of creatures so alien and hostile that no bridge could ever be built between their species. In 47 minutes, she would find out which possibility was true. The fate of humanity might depend on her ability to look into the eyes of a dragon and see something other than death staring back at her. The quantum drive disengaged with a subtle vibration that Sarah felt in her bones, and Defiance dropped back into normal space at the edge of the Kepler 442 system. The main screen immediately filled with a sight that took her breath away, and not in a good way. 3 dragons moved through the void between the system's outer planets with impossible grace, their kilometer-long bodies undulating in a synchronized dance that spoke of intelligence far beyond anything humanity had previously encountered. But it wasn't just their size or their alien beauty that made Sarah's heart race. It was the way they moved together, like performers in some cosmic ballet, their bioluminescent patterns flashing in sequences that could only be described as communication. These weren't mindless beasts following programmed instructions. These were thinking, feeling beings engaged in complex social interaction while they systematically destroyed everything human in the system. "My God," whispered Lieutenant Park, her voice barely audible over the hum of the ship's systems. Look at the complexity of their light patterns. Captain, this isn't random. There's syntax here, grammar. They're having a conversation. Dr. Yasi leaned forward in her seat, studying the readings from the empathy engine's passive sensors. Captain, I'm detecting massive psychic emanations from all three creatures. Their minds are vast, alien beyond anything we've prepared for, but definitely sentient. More than sentient, they're experiencing complex emotions. What kind of emotions? Sarah asked, though she wasn't sure she wanted to know the answer. Sadness, Dr. Yasi replied, her voice filled with wonder. Incredible, overwhelming sadness. And guilt? They're feeling guilt about what they're doing. Commander Murphy turned from his station, his face pale. Captain, sensors are showing massive destruction on Kepler 442b. The main colony is gone, but I'm reading life signs from the underground shelter Emma Voss mentioned. Approximately 200 humans still alive, but their power systems are failing. Sarah stared at the tactical display, showing the three dragons moving in their endless dance around the dying world. If Dr. Yasi was right, if these creatures were feeling guilt and sadness about their actions, then something was forcing them to attack against their will. The question was, what could possibly compel beings of such obvious intelligence and power to act against their own moral compass? Park, how long until the dragons reach the underground shelter? Sarah asked. At their current speed and trajectory, maybe 6 hours. But, Captain, there's something else. The energy signatures I detected earlier, they're coming from inside the largest dragon. There's some kind of technological device embedded in its body. Sarah felt pieces of a horrifying puzzle beginning to fall into place. A control device? Possibly. The energy patterns match some of the slave collar technology we've encountered from the hegemony worlds, but far more sophisticated. If someone is controlling these creatures, then we're dealing with a puppet master who's using dragons as weapons of war, Sarah finished. The question is, can we free them? Dr. Yasi looked up from her console, her dark eyes reflecting both excitement and fear. Captain, if we could establish contact with one of the dragons, the empathy engine might be able to interfere with whatever control mechanism is being used. But the risks are enormous. The psychic feedback from a mind that large could kill you, or worse, trap your consciousness inside an alien intellect. Sarah studied the three dragons on the screen, watching their graceful movements through space. She thought of Emma Voss and the other survivors huddled in their underground refuge, their air running out while these magnificent creatures approached like harbingers of death. She thought of the 2 million humans already killed in the attacks, and the terrible possibility that they had died not because of alien hatred, but because of alien enslavement. Murphy, can you get us close to the largest dragon without triggering an attack response? The ship's adaptive camouflage should hide us from their sensors, but, Captain, if they detect us at close range, we'll be completely vulnerable. Defiance is fast and heavily armed, but against a creature that size. Understand the risks, Sarah said. But if these beings are being controlled against their will, then they're victims just like the humans they're being forced to kill. We have to try to help them. She activated the ship-wide communication system. This is Captain Shun. In approximately 30 minutes, we're going to attempt something that's never been tried before. We're going to try to communicate with one of the dragons using the empathy engine. I won't lie to you. This is extremely dangerous, and we may not survive the attempt. But if we succeed, we might be able to save not only the survivors on Kepler 442b, but potentially millions of other lives throughout the galaxy. Sarah paused, looking at each member of her small crew. Anyone who wants to transfer to an escape pod and wait for pickup has my permission to do so. No questions asked, no judgment. Nobody moved. Lieutenant Park actually smiled slightly. With respect, Captain, if you think we're going to miss the first conversation between humans and dragons, you're crazy. Dr. Yasi nodded her agreement. Besides, someone needs to monitor your vital signs during the contact attempt. If your brain starts melting, I want to be here to pull you out. Commander Murphy chuckled grimly. And Someone needs to fly this ship if things go wrong. Count me in, Captain. Warmth spread through Sarah's chest as she looked at her crew, her friends, who were willing to risk everything on the slim chance that they could make a difference. All right then. Murphy, take us in. Park, I want continuous analysis of the dragon's communication patterns. If we can understand even a fragment of their language, it might help establish contact. Already on it, Captain. The patterns are incredibly complex, but there are recurring sequences that might be analogous to names or personal identifiers. The largest dragon seems to be called something that translates roughly to Keeper of Ancient Songs. The others are Swift Wind Through Stars and Memory of Home Waters. The poetry in the name struck Sarah like a physical blow. These weren't monsters or killing machines. They were individuals with names that spoke of beauty, memory, and loss. What kind of beings were their captors to enslave creatures of such obvious intelligence and sensitivity? Defiance crept through the void, its adaptive hull shifting colors and textures to match the cosmic background radiation. On the main screen, the dragons grew larger and more magnificent with each passing minute. Sarah could see details now that no human had ever observed before. The intricate patterns of scales that seemed to shift like liquid metal, the graceful fins that somehow propelled them through space with no visible means of propulsion, and the eyes, ancient, wise, and filled with an anguish that transcended species barriers. Contact range in 5 minutes, Murphy reported. The largest dragon, Keeper of Ancient Songs, is approximately 2 kilometers off our starboard bow. I'm reading massive bioelectric fields surrounding all 3 creatures. Whatever they are, they're generating more energy than a small star. Dr. Yassi was making final adjustments to the empathy engine, her hands dancing over crystalline controls that pulsed with inner light. Captain, I've calibrated the system to filter out the most dangerous psychic frequencies, but I can't guarantee your safety. The moment I detect any sign of mental trauma, I'm severing the connection. Understood. Park, what can you tell me about their emotional state right now? Lieutenant Park studied her readings, her expression growing more troubled by the minute. The sadness is intensifying, Captain. All 3 dragons are experiencing what can only be described as profound grief. But there's something else. Anticipation. They know something is about to happen. They've detected us? Sarah asked. I don't think so. It's more like they're responding to some kind of external stimulus. A command, maybe, or... Park's face went white. Captain, I'm detecting a massive energy spike from the control device in the largest dragon. Whatever it is, it's activating. On the screen, the dragon's movements suddenly changed. Their graceful dance became rigid, mechanical, as if they were fighting against invisible puppeteers. The bioluminescent patterns on their hides shifted from the beautiful, complex communication Sarah had observed to harsh, repetitive flashes that spoke of pain and resistance. They're fighting the control, Dr. Yassi breathed. Whatever's commanding them just gave them new orders, and they're trying to resist. The largest dragon, Keeper of Ancient Songs, suddenly turned toward the planet below, its massive form accelerating toward the underground shelter where Emma Voss and 200 other humans waited for rescue. The other 2 dragons followed, their movements jerky and unnatural. Time's up, Sarah said, settling into the empathy engine's interface chair. Doctor, initiate contact. If we're going to save those people, it has to be now. Dr. Yassi's hands moved over the controls, and the crystalline array around Sarah began to glow with an inner light that seemed to resonate in her bones. Contact in 10 seconds. Captain, remember, you're not just linking with an alien mind, you're potentially linking with whatever's controlling it. Be prepared for anything. Sarah felt the universe expand around her consciousness as the empathy engine activated. Her awareness stretched beyond the confines of her human body, reaching out across the void toward the massive intelligence of the dragon. For a moment, she touched something vast and ancient, a mind that had seen the birth and death of stars, that carried memories stretching back millions of years. And then she felt its pain. The agony of the enslaved dragon crashed into her consciousness like a tidal wave. She experienced the creature's memories of freedom, of soaring between galaxies with its podmates, of singing the ancient songs that kept the cosmos in harmony. She felt its love for its companions, its reverence for life in all its forms, and its absolute horror at being forced to destroy innocent beings. But beneath the dragon's natural thoughts, Sarah sensed something else, a cold, mechanical presence that wrapped around the creature's mind like chains of ice. The control device wasn't just giving orders, it was rewriting the dragon's thoughts, forcing it to act against every instinct and belief it held sacred. Through the link, Sarah felt the dragon's awareness of her presence. For a moment, its ancient eyes turned toward defiance, and she experienced a jolt of hope and desperate gratitude that nearly overwhelmed her human consciousness. "Help me," came a voice like distant thunder, speaking directly into her mind. "I am keeper of ancient songs, and I have been slave to the void whispers for 300 of your years. They force me to sing death instead of life, to spread silence instead of harmony. Help me remember who I was before the chains." Sarah tried to respond, to send comfort and reassurance back through the link, but the mechanical presence suddenly noticed her intrusion. She felt something vast and malevolent turn its attention toward her, an intelligence so cold and alien that it made the dragons seem like close relatives of humanity. "Interesting," came a voice like grinding metal and dying stars. "A human attempting telepathic contact. How delightfully primitive. You will serve as an excellent demonstration of what happens to those who interfere with our property." The voice belonged to something that called itself the Void Whisperer, and through the link, Sarah glimpsed images that filled her with terror. A galaxy-spanning empire built on enslaved minds. Countless species forced to serve masters who viewed consciousness itself as a resource to be harvested and controlled. The dragons were just one of many enslaved races, chosen for their power and sensitivity to be turned into weapons against their will. "Your species shows promise," the Void Whisperer continued. "Perhaps we will spare a few million of you to serve as entertainment. The rest will feed our expansion into this section of the galaxy." But as the alien presence pressed against her mind, trying to establish its own control over her thoughts, Sarah felt something unexpected. The dragon, keeper of ancient songs, was fighting back, using the connection she had established to shield her from the Void Whisperer's influence. "I will not let them take you as they took me." The dragon's voice thundered in her consciousness. "Break the chains, small singer. Show them that even the smallest voice can shatter the silence they spread." Through the dragon's memories, Sarah saw the location of the control device, a crystalline parasite embedded deep in the creature's brainstem, pulsing with malevolent energy. She also saw something else, a weak point in the device's design, a frequency that could disrupt its control matrix. "Doctor!" Sarah shouted aloud, her voice carrying back to the bridge of defiance. "I need you to modulate the empathy engine to frequency 2.7 terahertz. The control device has a resonance weakness." She felt Dr. Yassi's hands flying over the controls, adjusting the engine's output. The crystalline device in the dragon's brain began to vibrate, its control signals wavering as the disruptive frequency took effect. For the first time in 3 centuries, Keeper of Ancient Songs felt a moment of true freedom. And in that moment it sang. The song that emerged from the dragon was nothing like the sounds humans associated with music. It was a harmonic vibration that touched every molecule in the surrounding space, a cosmic symphony that spoke of joy, freedom, and the unbreakable bonds that connected all living things. The song carried across the void to its 2 companions, and Sarah felt their own control devices beginning to weaken under the assault of pure, undiluted harmony. But the Void Whisperers were not defenseless. Even as the control devices failed, Sarah felt their masters reaching across space with other tools, other weapons designed to reclaim their escaped property. The battle for the dragon's freedom had only just begun. The cosmic song of freedom that erupted from Keeper of Ancient Songs created ripples through space-time that registered on every sensor aboard Defiance. Sarah felt the dragon's joy and relief flooding through the psychic link, a euphoria so intense that tears streamed down her face as she experienced 3 centuries of captivity ending in a single, perfect moment of liberation. But the celebration was short-lived. Space around them began to distort as massive hyperspace rifts tore open like wounds in reality. Through the tears in space-time, Sarah glimpsed something that made her blood freeze. Ships the size of small moons, their hulls covered in the same crystalline parasites that had controlled the dragons. The Void Whisperers had arrived to reclaim their escaped property, and they brought with them the full might of an empire that had enslaved entire star systems. "Captain," Commander Murphy's voice cut through the psychic connection. "We got incoming hostiles. 12 dreadnoughts, each one the size of Manhattan. They're powering weapons that our sensors can't even classify." Through her link with Keeper of Ancient Songs, Sarah felt the dragon's terror and determination warring against each other. The creature's memories showed her what the Void Whisperers were capable of. Entire planets stripped of consciousness, their populations turned into empty-eyed servants who lived only to serve their master's will. But she also felt something else, a deep, abiding love for its 2 companions who were still struggling against their own control devices. Swift wind through stars and memory of home waters are still partially enslaved. The dragon's voice thundered in her mind. The resonance frequency you discovered affects each control device differently. My podmates need different harmonic patterns to achieve freedom. Dr. Yassi's voice crackled through the bridge speakers. "Captain, your neural patterns are becoming dangerously unstable. The link with the dragon is putting enormous strain on your human brain. I can maintain the connection for maybe 10 more minutes before permanent damage occurs. 10 minutes to free 2 dragons, fight off 12 alien dreadnoughts, and save 200 human lives on the planet below." Sarah would have laughed at the impossibility of all if she weren't too busy trying to keep her sanity intact while sharing consciousness with a being whose memories span geological ages. "Hark, I need you to analyze the bioluminescent patterns from the other 2 dragons. Look for differences in frequency, rhythm, anything that might indicate what resonance patterns could disrupt their control devices." Lieutenant Park's hands flew over her instruments, processing terabytes of data in seconds. "Captain, I'm seeing variations in their neural oscillations. Swift wind through stars appears to need a frequency around 3.2 terahertz, while memory of home waters requires something much higher, maybe 4.8 terahertz. The lead Void Whisperer dreadnought had finished powering its weapons, and Sarah felt a malevolent intelligence probing the edges of her consciousness through the psychic link. The alien's thoughts were like ice water flowing through her mind, carrying images of humanity's future as an enslaved species. She saw Earth's cities empty of free will, its people shuffling through daily routines while their masters fed on their life force like parasites. "You have interfered with our property for the last time." The Void Whisperer's mental voice cut through her thoughts like a blade of frozen starlight. "Your species will serve as an example to others who might consider rebellion against our rule." But as the alien tried to establish control over her mind, Sarah felt Keeper of Ancient Songs surge protectively around her consciousness. The dragon's vast intelligence formed a barrier between her and the Void Whisperer, even as energy beams from the dreadnoughts began to lance through space toward Defiance. "Evasive maneuvers," Murphy shouted, throwing the ship into a series of violent turns that tested the limits of its inertial compensators. "These weapons are unlike anything in our databases. They're not targeting our hull. They're targeting our life signs directly." The Void Whisperers had developed weapons that attacked consciousness itself, Sarah realized with growing horror. They didn't need to destroy ships or bodies when they could simply steal the minds that controlled them. It was the perfect weapon for an empire built on enslaved minds. Doctor, initiate the frequency changes for the other dragons, Sarah commanded through gritted teeth. If we can free all three, maybe they can help us fight these monsters. Dr. Yasi began adjusting the empathy engine's output, shifting between the frequencies Park had identified. Through her connection with Keeper of Ancient Songs, Sarah felt the other dragons beginning to stir as their control devices weakened. Swift Wind Through Stars was the first to break free, its joyful song joining the cosmic harmony that was spreading through local space. But Memory of Home Waters was different. As a resonance frequency disrupted its control device, Sarah felt something terrible and unexpected flowing through the psychic link. This dragon wasn't just enslaved, it was dying. The control device had been implanted so long ago that removing it would cause fatal brain damage. I have carried the chains for 800 of your years. Memory of Home Waters spoke into Sarah's mind, its mental voice weak but filled with ancient wisdom. The device has grown too deep into my thoughts to be safely removed. But perhaps I can choose how my song ends. Through the link, Sarah felt the dying dragon making a terrible decision. Instead of trying to flee or heal itself, Memory of Home Waters began to sing a different kind of song, one of sacrifice and protection. Its massive form turned toward the Void Whisperer dreadnoughts, and Sarah realized what it intended to do. No, she shouted both aloud and through the psychic link. There has to be another way. There is no other way for me, little singer, the dragon replied. But my death can have meaning if it protects those who still have chances to live free. Tell the universe that we were more than weapons. Tell them that we chose love over hatred, even at the end. Memory of Home Waters accelerated toward the lead dreadnought, its body beginning to glow with an inner light that grew brighter with each passing second. Sarah understood what was happening. The dragon was overloading its own bioelectric systems, turning itself into a living bomb fueled by 8 centuries of suppressed rage and newly discovered freedom. The Void Whisperer fleet opened fire with everything they had, but their weapons were designed to capture minds, not stop a creature that had already chosen to die free rather than live enslaved. Memory of Home Waters crashed into the lead dreadnought at a significant fraction of light speed, and the resulting explosion briefly outshone the system's star. The psychic shockwave from the dragon's death scream tore through space, disrupting the Void Whisperer's weapons and damaging their ship's control systems. But more importantly, it carried something else, the pure, undiluted concept of freedom broadcast across hyperspace frequencies that would reach every enslaved mind in the galaxy. Through her link with Keeper of Ancient Songs, Sarah felt the aftermath of that sacrifice rippling outward like waves in a cosmic pond. On distant worlds throughout the galaxy, enslaved beings suddenly remembered what it meant to choose their own actions. Control devices that had functioned perfectly for millennia began to malfunction as their victims' minds rejected the chains that bound them. The revolution has begun, Keeper of Ancient Songs whispered in her mind. Memory of Home Waters has given the galaxy something more precious than life: hope. The remaining Void Whisperer ships were retreating now, their formations broken by the psychic shockwave and the loss of their flagship. But Sarah knew this was only a temporary victory. The aliens would return with stronger weapons, better defenses, and a deeper understanding of how dangerous free dragons could be. Doctor, can you maintain a link with both surviving dragons while we head for the planet? Sarah asked. Those people down there are still in danger, and we need to get them evacuated before the Void Whisperers regroup. I can try, Captain, but your brain is already showing signs of severe strain. Much more of this, and you'll suffer permanent neurological damage. Sarah felt the truth of Dr. Yassi's warning in the growing headache that threatened to split her skull in half. But she also felt something else, the gratitude and determination of 2 free dragons who had chosen to trust humanity despite centuries of enslavement by another alien species. Swift Wind Through Stars, and I will protect your ship as you rescue the surface dwellers. keeper of ancient songs, promised. We owe you a debt that can never be fully repaid. You have given us back our songs. Defiance dove toward Kepler. 442b with its two dragon escorts, their combined presence creating a protective field that deflected the automated defense systems the Void Whisperers had left behind. As they entered the planet's atmosphere, Sarah could see the devastation that 3 days of attack had wrought. The main colony was indeed gone, reduced to slag and ash, but the underground shelters had held. "I'm reading life signs from the primary shelter," Murphy reported. 217 humans, including children. Their power systems are failing, but they're alive. Through the ship's external cameras, Sarah watched as the two dragons worked together to clear debris from the shelter's entrance. Their massive forms moved with incredible delicacy, using specialized appendages she hadn't noticed before to manipulate objects with surgical precision. These weren't just powerful beings. They were engineers, artists, and builders whose skills had been perverted into tools of destruction. The shelter doors opened, and survivors began to emerge into the alien sunlight. Sarah felt her heart clench as she saw Emma Voss among them, a 12-year-old girl who had broadcast into the darkness and somehow been answered by creatures from beyond the stars. The child looked up at the dragons with wonder rather than fear, as if she somehow understood that these magnificent beings were friends rather than enemies. "Captain," Dr. Yassi's voice was urgent now. "Your neural patterns are approaching critical levels. I need to sever the connection immediately." "Not yet," Sarah gasped, blood trickling from her nose as the strain of maintaining psychic contact with two dragon minds pushed her human brain toward its breaking point. "The evacuation isn't complete, and there are Void Whisper automated systems still active in the outer system. The dragons need to know about our fleet positions, our defensive capabilities. This might be our only chance to share strategic information." Through the link, she felt Keeper of Ancient Songs accessing her memories, learning about human military capabilities and the locations of Earth and the core worlds. But the dragon wasn't just taking information. It was also sharing its own knowledge of Void Whisperer tactics, technology, and weaknesses accumulated over centuries of unwilling service. "Your species has courage beyond your size," the dragon observed. "The Void Whisperers believe that smaller minds are weaker minds, but they are wrong. Sometimes the smallest voice can carry the greatest truth." Swift Wind Through Stars added its own mental voice to the conversation. "We know the locations of their slave-holding worlds, their fleet positions, their secret weapons projects. This knowledge we share freely, as payment for the gift of freedom you have given us." As the last of the survivors boarded Defiance's emergency shelters, Sarah felt the psychic link beginning to collapse under the strain of her overtaxed brain. But in the final moments of connection, she experienced something extraordinary. The true song of the dragons, not the abbreviated version that had disrupted the control devices, but the complete cosmic symphony that these beings used to maintain harmony throughout the galaxy. The song was mathematics and music and poetry all at once, a universal language that transcended the barriers between species. It spoke of stars being born and civilizations rising to greatness, of the delicate balance that kept galaxies stable, and the love that bound all conscious beings together despite the vast distances between them. "Remember our song," were the last words Keeper of Ancient Songs spoke into her failing mind. "Teach it to others, so that the silence the Void Whisperers spread will never again cover the cosmos." Dr. Yassi severed the psychic connection just as Sarah's neural patterns flatlined momentarily. For several terrifying seconds, the bridge crew thought they had lost their captain, but then her vital signs stabilized and her eyes fluttered open. "Status report," she whispered, her voice hoarse from the strain of maintaining contact with minds vast beyond human comprehension. "All survivors evacuated successfully," Murphy reported. "The dragons have taken up escort positions around the ship. They're singing again. The harmonies are affecting our navigation systems, but not in a harmful way. It's like they're creating a protective field around us." Sarah struggled to sit up, her head still pounding from the psychic ordeal. Through the main screen, she could see the two dragons moving in formation around Defiance, their bioluminescent patterns creating beautiful, complex displays that seemed to celebrate the successful rescue mission. But she also knew that this was only the beginning. The Void Whisperers would return in greater numbers, and humanity would need every advantage it could get in the war that was coming. Fortunately, they now had allies whose power and wisdom spanned millions of years, and whose songs of freedom were already spreading to every enslaved mind in the galaxy. The revolution that Memory of Home Waters had started with its sacrifice would not be stopped by armies or fleets. It would spread from mind to mind, from world to world, until every thinking being in the universe understood that freedom was not a gift to be given by masters, but a birthright to be claimed by the courageous. As Defiance and its dragon escorts began the journey back to human space, Sarah closed her eyes and tried to remember every note of the cosmic song she had been privileged to hear. Somewhere in that ancient melody lay the key to victory, not just for humanity, but for every enslaved species yearning to break free from their chains. 3 months after the liberation of Keeper of Ancient Songs and Swift Wind Through Stars, the war had transformed from humanity's desperate struggle for survival into something far greater, a galaxy-wide rebellion against the Void Whisperers' empire of enslaved minds. Sarah stood on the observation deck of Harmony Station, humanity's first joint construction project with their dragon allies, watching as representatives from 43 different species arrived to form what historians would later call the Liberation Alliance. The station itself was a marvel of cooperative engineering, its organic curves flowing seamlessly into crystalline structures that served both human and dragon needs. Keeper of Ancient Songs had contributed not just materials and labor, but songs' harmonic frequencies that strengthened molecular bonds and created architectural forms that resonated with the fundamental frequencies of space-time itself. The result was a structure that was both beautiful and nearly indestructible, a physical manifestation of the friendship between species that had begun with a desperate gamble in the void around Kepler 442b. Through the transparent aluminum viewport, Sarah could see dozens of ships that would have been inconceivable just months ago. Sleek human vessels flew in formation with the massive, organic forms of liberated dragons. Crystalline ships from the recently freed Resonance Collective shared docking space with the living vessels of the Symbiont Coalition. Each species brought their own unique capabilities to the Alliance, but they were united by something more precious than military might, the shared memory of freedom won through sacrifice. Captain Shun came a familiar mental voice that no longer required the empathy engine to perceive clearly. Over the past months, Sarah's exposure to dragon consciousness had permanently altered her neural pathways, allowing direct telepathic communication with their alien allies. The final delegate ships have arrived. Are you ready to address the Alliance Council? Sarah turned to see Keeper of Ancient Songs floating outside the station, its kilometer-long form casting shifting shadows through the viewport. The dragon's bioluminescent patterns had changed since its liberation, becoming more complex and beautiful as its long-suppressed creativity finally found expression. No longer forced to sing songs of death and destruction, the ancient being had become a composer of cosmic symphonies that helped coordinate the growing rebellion. As ready as anyone could be to ask 43 different species to risk everything on a plan that sounds insane, Sarah replied, both aloud and through the telepathic link. The plan in question was indeed ambitious to the point of seeming impossible. A coordinated strike against the Void Whisperers' home galaxy, designed not to destroy their empire, but to liberate it by singing memory of Home Water's freedom song directly into the source of their power. Dr. Yasi approached from the station's central laboratory, her arms full of data tablets, and her expression mixing excitement with exhaustion. Over the past months, she had become the galaxy's leading expert on psychic technology, working with dragon scientists to develop new applications for the empathy engine technology. Captain, The final calculations are complete. If our theories are correct, the harmonic resonance cascade should propagate through the Void Whisperer's entire control network within 72 hours of initiation. And if our theories are wrong, Sarah asked, though she already knew the answer, then we'll have given the Void Whisperers a detailed map of every rebel stronghold in the galaxy, along with the location of their most powerful enemies. Dr. Yasi replied grimly. They'll be able to crush the rebellion in a matter of weeks. Lieutenant Park, now promoted to commander and serving as the Alliance's chief intelligence officer, materialized beside them with her characteristic efficiency. Captain, I've compiled the final intelligence reports from our deep cover operatives in Void Whisper territory. The situation is worse than we thought, but also more hopeful. She activated a holographic display showing a three-dimensional map of the enemy empire. Red indicators marked slave worlds where billions of beings lived in mental bondage, while pulsing symbols indicated control stations that maintained the psychic network binding them. The bad news is that they're holding approximately 14 billion enslaved minds across 3 galaxies. The good news is that those minds are all connected to a central psychic matrix located in their home system. A single point of failure, Sarah mused, studying the tactical implications. If we can corrupt that matrix with a freedom song, every enslaved mind in their empire should break free simultaneously, Commander Park confirmed. But, Captain, getting close enough to their home system to initiate the harmonic cascade will require us to penetrate the most heavily defended space in the known universe. Their fleet positions alone include over 10,000 dreadnoughts, plus automated defense systems that our scouts couldn't even begin to catalog. Through the telepathic link, Sarah felt swift wind through stars approaching the station. The younger dragon had become the Alliance's primary scout, its incredible speed allowing it to gather intelligence from deep within enemy territory. Its songs carried notes of both determination and sadness. Determination to free its enslaved kin, and sadness for what they would likely have to sacrifice to achieve that goal. The Void Whisperers have learned from our previous encounters, Swiftwind reported through the shared mental network that connected all Alliance commanders. They have developed new control devices specifically designed to prevent the kind of liberation we achieved at Kepler 442b. Worse, they have begun experimenting with human subjects, trying to create a new breed of enslaved telepaths to counter our psychic advantages. Sarah felt sick at the thought of humans reduced to empty-eyed servants of the Void Whisperers, their creativity and independence crushed beneath alien control. But she also felt the fierce determination that had made her species dangerous despite their small size and short lifespans. Humanity had always been at its best when faced with impossible odds. Then, we'd better make this count, she said aloud. Park, how many ships can we commit to the operation? The full Alliance fleet numbers approximately 8,000 vessels of various sizes and capabilities. Not enough to fight through their defenses conventionally, but if we can coordinate the attack with uprising from their enslaved populations. The enslaved dragons will help, Keeper of Ancient Songs interjected. Even under control, they retain some capacity for independent thought. When they hear the freedom song, they will remember who they truly are and turn against their masters. The same may be true for other enslaved species. Emma Voss, now 15 and serving as the youngest member of the Alliance Council, approached the group with the fearless confidence that had made her a natural spokesperson for the liberation movement. The girl who had broadcast into the darkness from a dying world had become a symbol of hope for enslaved beings throughout the galaxy, and her youth gave her a perspective that older, more experienced leaders sometimes lacked. Captain Shun, she said, her voice carrying the authority that came from having witnessed both the worst and best that the galaxy had to offer. The children's delegation has a proposal. We want to be part of the final mission. Sarah felt every protective instinct she possessed surge to life. Emma, this is going to be the most dangerous operation in galactic history. We can't risk. With respect, Captain, you can't risk leaving us behind Emma interrupted, her young eyes blazing with conviction. The children who survive the dragon attacks carry something special, a psychic resonance that formed when we experience terror and hope simultaneously. Dr. Yassi's tests have proven that our minds can amplify the freedom song in ways that adult brains simply can't duplicate. Dr. Yassi nodded reluctantly. It's true, Captain. Children who experience direct exposure to dragon consciousness during moments of extreme emotion show enhanced telepathic capabilities. Their neuroplasticity allows them to process psychic frequencies that would overwhelm mature minds. The thought of taking children into battle against the galaxy's most dangerous enemy went against every instinct Sarah had developed during her military career. But she also remembered being 12 years old herself, remembered the fierce independence and clarity of thought that came before adult caution and compromise-clouded judgment. Sometimes the smallest voices carried the greatest truth. The Council will have to approve it, she said finally. But, Emma, if you're going to be part of this, you need to understand what we're really asking. This isn't a rescue mission or a liberation raid. This is a suicide mission with the potential to save billions of lives. Most of us aren't expecting to come back. Emma smiled with the fearless optimism of youth. Captain, 3 months ago, I was hiding in a basement, waiting to die. Everything since then has been borrowed time. If I can help free even one dragon who's been enslaved for centuries, then it's time well spent. The Alliance Council convened 6 hours later in Harmony Station's Great Chamber, a vast spherical space designed to accommodate representatives from species ranging from tiny crystalline beings to massive gas giant dwellers. The acoustics have been carefully tuned by Dragon Song engineers, creating an environment where every voice could be heard clearly regardless of its frequency or volume. Sarah took her place at the central podium, looking out at the assembled delegates who represented the last free populations of 43 species. Some were refugees from worlds destroyed by Void Whisper expansion. Others were former slaves who had escaped or been liberated during the past months of rebellion. All of them shared the knowledge that their freedom was temporary unless they could find a way to end the Void Whisper Empire once and for all. Delegates of the Liberation Alliance, Sarah began, her voice carrying clearly through both acoustic and telepathic channels. 3 months ago, humanity made contact with our first dragon allies through desperation and luck. Today, we stand together as representatives of free minds from across the galaxy. Tomorrow, we will either strike a blow for freedom that resonates through history, or we will die in the attempt. There is no middle ground. She activated the holographic display showing their plan of attack. Operation Songfall will require precise coordination between every ship in the Alliance fleet, every liberated dragon willing to risk their lives, and every free mind capable of contributing to the harmonic cascade. The mathematics are simple. If we can sing the Freedom Song directly into the Void Whisper control matrix, their entire empire will collapse within hours. The crystalline delegate, its faceted form refracting the chamber's light into complex patterns, spoke in harmonics that the translation matrix converted to understandable concepts. Query: probability of mission success given current force dispositions and enemy defensive capabilities? Approximately 12%, Sarah answered honestly. But the probability of long-term survival if we don't attempt this operation is effectively zero. The Void Whisperers have already begun developing new weapons specifically designed to counter our psychic abilities. If we give them time to deploy those weapons, we lose any chance of victory. The gas giant delegate, a sentient storm pattern that communicated through electromagnetic fluctuations, posed the next question. Assessment: what specific contributions required from member species to achieve mission objectives? Sarah took a deep breath, knowing that what she was about to ask would seem impossible to most of the delegates. Every ship capable of combat will be needed for the final assault. Every telepath, regardless of age or experience, will be required to contribute to the harmonic resonance. And every dragon, regardless of their current physical condition, will be asked to sing the freedom song with maximum intensity, knowing that the psychic strain may prove fatal. A murmur of concern rippled through the chamber. The dragon delegates, in particular, radiated complex emotions through the telepathic network. Fear for their own survival, but also desperate hope that their enslaved kin might finally know freedom. Keeper of Ancient Songs spoke for all the liberated dragons. We accept these risks gladly. For too long, our songs have been twisted into weapons of enslavement and destruction. If we can use our voices to break the chains that bind millions of our people, then we will sing until our hearts stop beating. The vote was closer than Sarah had hoped. 23 species in favor, 16 opposed, and 4 abstentions, but it was enough. Operation Songfall would proceed in 72 hours, giving the Alliance just enough time to position their forces for the coordinated assault. As the delegates filed out of the chamber, Sarah found herself alone with Emma Voss and the 2 dragon allies who had become her closest friends among the liberated beings. The weight of leadership pressed down on her shoulders like a physical force. In 3 days, she would either witness the greatest liberation in galactic history or preside over the destruction of everything they had built together. "Captain," Emma said quietly, "do you really think we have a chance?" Sarah looked out through the viewport at the Alliance fleet gathering around Harmony Station. Ships from dozens of worlds, crewed by beings who had chosen freedom over safety, hope over despair. "I think we have something the Void Whisperers have never faced before," she replied. "We have people willing to die for an idea rather than live as slaves. That's more powerful than any weapon they've ever built." Through the telepathic link, she felt Keeper of Ancient Songs and Swift Wind through stars harmonizing in a low, complex song that spoke of ancient memories and future hopes. The music carried overtones of sacrifice and redemption, of bonds formed between species despite impossible differences, and of the terrible beauty that could emerge from the darkest moments of history. In 72 hours, that song would either liberate 14 billion enslaved minds or serve as a funeral dirge for the last free beings in the galaxy. Either way, it would be sung with voices united across the vast gulfs of space and evolution, proving that consciousness itself was stronger than any force that sought to contain it. As Harmony Station prepared for what might be its final mission, Sarah Chun closed her eyes and listened to the dragon's song, memorizing every note in case she needed to carry it with her into whatever came next. In the cosmic symphony of freedom, even the smallest voice could make all the difference between silence and song, between slavery and liberation, between despair and hope.